Performance comes down to controlling what you can. For tennis pro, Jessica Pegula, that means starting with the air around her. She can't control her opponent or the match, but she can control her rest and recovery. That's why she's trusted Blue Air for 5 years and counting. Blue Signature air purifiers are engineered to perform and designed to impress, with 7 stages of advanced filtration, up to 10 times more odor removal, and customizable colors and accessories. Shop blueair.com and use code SIGNATURE30 to save.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
He's an old head.
Youngins are really starting to get on my damn nerves.
He's a purveyor of nonsense. He's a Georgia high school coaching job influencer. His favorite Bible verse is, Jesus wept. He's the man of constant sorrow, Chris Lamb.
Yeah.
Welcome to Sun Coaches Podcast, and today I'm joined by newly named Coosa head coach Geoff Cannon. Coach Cannon, thanks for being with me.
Thank you, Coach. Glad to be here.
Well, Coach, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and how you got started, all that kind of good stuff.
Yes, sir. I am originally from Marietta, Georgia. Lived in one spot in East Cobb. 18 years, before I, went to college. I graduated from Walton High School, and I played football my first 3 years for Robbie Robertson, who had come over from Wheeler, which was the old Canton Road gang rivalry. That was a huge rivalry back in the day. I don't know, just because all the schools in Cobb County, the proximity is just ridiculous. Being down in South Georgia for as long as I was, taking a 2 hour and 15-minute bus ride one way to play a region game. I grew up where, all your rivals and all the schools were just, 5-10 minutes from each other. And so I always thought that was interesting. But I played 3 years for Robbie Robertson, and then my senior year, a 32-year-old Ed Dudley got the job at Walton, and so I was able, thankfully so, to get 1 year. The first year that Ed Dudley was the head football coach at Walton High School was my senior year, and honestly, with summer workouts and then all the way through a football season. I only was really around him for 5 months. But then after that, I don't know, it was just something about it. Coach Dudley means a lot to me and has been a mentor of mine for decades. He's why I've become a football coach and why I'm a school teacher. And there's a bunch of other coaches too, really, that, in my experience growing up, that really laid a strong foundation for me, to want to do this. Now, it wasn't always like that, though. I'll tell you what, when I was a sophomore or junior in high school, I think to myself, man, teaching world geography or U.S. history and coaching football has got to be the best thing ever. And then, I thought that, just not really knowing how things worked, I just thought, well, maybe I ought to go get a different job, when I grow up, I can make some money, because those poor teachers aren't paid anything, and I just don't know how I'd survive. And, when I got to Auburn, I graduated from Walton in 1996. So it's a long time ago, feels like. When I got to Auburn, I had some opportunities to play. Coach Dudley had played at Rhodes College, and I had gone up there and had an opportunity. Swanee, Maryville, all those smaller Tennessee schools were really my only, Division III in the mid to 90s was about my only shot, go into significant debt to to be able to play college football, and so I, honestly, now networking wise and seeing where God had me end up, in coaching football, it probably would have really helped me to have played. But at the time, too many of my friends that I had played with that were older than me that went to college, played college football, they ended up having such a negative experience. They came home or just, quit playing or whatever. And I'll be honest, Coach, I from the 6th grade to the 12th grade, football was really good to me. And I loved it. And I honestly had this conversation with my father. I remember I didn't want football to like end on a bad note for myself. Like I wanted to always love it.
Right.
And, my parents are from Birmingham and my dad was an Auburn graduate. I knew I was going to Auburn since I could, say War Eagle. And, my sister's a couple years older than me and she was the first graduating class in the state of Georgia to get the Hope Scholarship. So she went to Georgia. And I remember my dad coming down to talk to me about college. He comes downstairs and he's like, now look, I need you to apply to Georgia. And I said, why? I'm not going. I was like, I said, tell you what, Dad, give me $50. That was the application fee. I was like, you just want to piss away $50. That's fine. Just give me $50 and we'll call it even. 'Cause I ain't going. And, I got waitlisted anyway. I did eventually get in, but, I came home from football practice on the first day of school in mid to late August in 1995 and got my acceptance letter to Auburn. And that was it, baby. It shifted to neutral, got out of that, and I'm a math guy. I'm in the weight room now, being the head football coach, but most of my career, I've been in the math classroom, but I'm getting out of that advanced algebra trig class, going into, computer math and statistics. Like I am coasting, and I get to Auburn and, my dad was like, well, is there anything you think you can do to like be involved, with football? And I was like, Dad, no, like there's just nothing that, I'm just going to go, I guess, just be a regular student, and play intramurals or something, hit softballs. I don't know. I didn't really have a clue what I was going to get to when I got to Auburn. I tell you what, though, I was pre-dental when I got there. Like I was going to be a dentist, man. I don't know.
Like Hermie the elf on the Rudolph shows.
Yeah. I mean, like I had no idea.
I'm going to be a dentist.
That's right. I remember going through, the orientation at Auburn's called Camp War Eagle. So I remember flipping through the course catalog because we had like this newspaper type catalog, and then you had to go you line up, and then you picked up a telephone, and it was an automated system.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
so we had graduated from like filling out the note cards, right? And like waiting in line to see if the people at the registrar, can get on. So, Auburn was super advanced in 1996.
Tech. Oh yeah. That was high tech when you could do it on the phone. Yeah. Press 1 if you want. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And then you're just denied. That's like denied. That's full. That class is closed. I mean, all this stuff. Yeah. And I'm flipping through this course catalog to see like all the like science that I have to take, like the physics and the biology and all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? That's probably not really for me either.
Yeah, let's look what this PE degree's got.
Yeah, right. And so, interestingly enough, when I was 20 years old, May of 1998, my father, he's 47 years old. He died of a heart attack.
Oh no! And
so it was 2 weeks before. I was 2 weeks out till finals, and I missed a week. I mean, man, I had to go home. I had to go home and take care of my mom. My sister. I just had to look after some stuff. So I missed a whole week of class, and I get back to Auburn, and I'm sitting in one of my. I was taking a business calculus class, so it was calculus. It was a math class, but it was called business calculus. It was Math 169. I remember the class and everything. And I'm sitting there in the professor's office, and he's not giving me any wiggle room on the homework that I missed.
No grace.
So like he's giving me zeros, and I'm sitting in this man's office, and I'm thinking, I'm going to jail.
Because I'm going to kill this guy.
Yeah, like I'm getting in a fight with a professor I was filled with so much emotion
Right.
and young rage. I mean, again, I was 20 years old and I was saying, I'm going to jail. And for some reason I don't. What I did do though, Coach, is because, I was so proud and immature and ridiculous.
What's up, Foos? Main event Jay Uso here from the WWE. When it's just me between matches, it's day one-ish. And that means it's Chumba time. With hundreds of casino-style games and new titles arriving weekly, there's always something fresh to try at Chumba Casino. The daily boosts make it even more fun. And have me about to get them all during my downtime. Ready for a fun way to chill out and enjoy a few minutes for yourself? Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T's and C's. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
I didn't go to the final, and I failed the class. And I'll be honest with you, Coach. I got 4 kids. None of them know that I have gotten anything under an A in my life. It just hadn't come time to tell them the story yet. I guess maybe they'll tune in. But and this was also the time before Auburn had a grade replacement policy. I'll have you know, I took that class again from a different professor in the fall and made an A.
Right.
And, but the A and the F just averaged out to a C or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
It's all grade replacement now.
Yeah. We didn't have that back then. I remember my grandmother got diagnosed with cancer and I went through the same thing and I had to take a WF withdrawal failing. And I'm looking at the professor going, you seriously can't be serious.
Yeah.
I missed 2 weeks. I mean, this is a family situation, dude.
Yeah.
And they're looking at me going, tough. And I'm going, tough, dude, I will choke you.
Yeah. I had friends go to this professor. Like I get back, to where I was living and I was like, whoo, guys, like I really almost murdered somebody, and I tell them. And so the next day, a couple of them go to the dean of the College of Business at Auburn. And they're like, everyone but the professor was super sympathetic, but they said their hands were tied. They said there was nothing in the handbook that addresses this. And my whole point was
be a human.
I'm not the first one that's had a parent die since 1856 when it was East Alabama Men's College.
Right.
Like there's just no way. How has this not been thought of? And they're just like, we just don't address it. And I'm like, well, you can address this F, I guess, that I'm about to get. and so that's really, it was interesting, but I'll be honest. So I got an accounting degree. I changed my major to accounting because my dad had an accounting degree from Auburn, So I was like, well, this clearly is what I'm going to do because I was really, I was young. I was really, trying to relate. It was a sudden death. It was all very shocking. I'm 46, Coach Lamb, and my dad was 47 when he died. Like there's just something, I don't think that it doesn't appear to me for that I'm in that situation, but it certainly reminds me to hug my dang kids.
Right.
And my wife has been on me for, 21 years about heart health and regular checkups and things like that. And it's important. I think, my parents went to Berry High School in Birmingham, which is now Hoover. So my dad basically went to Hoover, but it was before it was Hoover. And he played for a guy named Bob Finley. And that guy was an absolute legend. And there's a Bob Finley Day in Alabama. Like he got a day. And that's how this legendary coach was. And interestingly enough, he became the head coach at Berry High School for my dad's senior year. I always thought that was neat because, I only had Coach Dudley for my senior year. But, dang, Bob Finley was cutting grass. He was cutting the game field, in the early 90s when he died of a heart attack cutting the grass. And I'm thinking, man, that's, at this point in my life, you can't cut grass anymore because they're all turf fields up here anyway. That's what I'm learning. But I mean, what a way to go.
So you come out of Auburn, what was your first? So, I mean, you got an accounting degree. How did you end up in education?
Right. Bunch of, nice genius that I am, right. Trying to just follow some things. So 2 weeks before graduation, I call Ed Dudley and I said, man, I've made a mistake. What do I do? I would like to pursue a career in education. And obviously along with that, I'd like to coach some football. And he said, man, go to the College of Education and see what they can do. He talked about the TAP program. He talked about alternative things, alternative ways of getting certified and all that. So I go into the College of Education. This is 2 weeks before graduation in 1996. And I'm sitting in there and I'm talking to a couple ladies in there. They were super nice. Now, they were a little tongue in cheek with me. Now they were like, I bet you want to just be a coach, and I'm like, ma'am, that might be a part of it. Yes, but I've made a mistake. What do I need to do? They pulled my transcripts and they said, basically, you've taken care of your core. You would have 2 more years of undergrad to just get your basic undergrad education. And I said, well, I had already been offered a job in Raleigh, North Carolina with Ferguson Enterprises. It's wholesale, like pipes, valves, fittings, and stuff like that. And so I said, thank you for your time. That ain't happening. And I graduated and moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, and just me and my dog. And I worked for Ferguson Enterprises for 2 years, and I was a controller and a credit manager for them. And basically in Raleigh, I was just supposed to train, because it was like a $50 or $60 million branch. It was one of their bigger branches. So you're supposed to train there, and then they ship you off to like Johnson City, Tennessee or something, right? They send you to a really small place and a small branch, kind of get your own. But during that process, the guy that was training me transferred to like mergers and acquisitions, and they ended up offering me the job. So I took it. And so I was this controller at this huge branch, and I got a really nice pay raise to do it. And, I got to be honest, the whole time I was absolutely miserable. Now, pretty easy looking back. I wasn't going to church, and I was way outside of God's will. I wasn't even asking God if I was even remotely in the wheelhouse. That's kind of, and that was out of character for me. I came to know the Lord at 14 years old at Camp Walton. So it was a couple weeks before school started, my 9th grade year. And Coach Robertson had always took the team off, for a week. And we were in, Fort Bluff, Tennessee at this camp. And apparently we got a discount at the camp if the guy could preach to us every night. This guy's name was Mike Crane. And he would come every night, and he was like this martial artist. So he would like be blindfolded and pop water balloons with a dart gun on a coach's head and stuff. It was just wild, man. And he sliced a watermelon, on our O lineman's, stomach blindfold, and all this kind of cool stuff.
Like Ninja Jesus.
Yeah, it was awesome, dude. And honestly, I wasn't raised in a Christian home. My parents were outstanding humans. They loved each other, and they loved me and my sister. So you can't beat how I was brought up. You just absolutely can't beat it. And but what was missing was that it just wasn't something that we did. And 14 years old, I heard the gospel, and it was the first time I'd ever heard it in my life. I know it wasn't, but it sure felt like it was. And I made a life-changing decision, changed my life forever. But, fast forward to 22 and being fresh out of college and thinking that I've got to take care of all these things on my own, and that, I'm grown and there's nothing left for me to learn. I've just got to go to this job every day and try to make money. And I was making outstanding money for a 22-year-old fresh out of school. And, but I was miserable. And so so miserable that I couldn't sleep Sunday night because I just had so much dread about the week to come. And I'd be in the shower in the mornings, man, thinking, man, if I could just slip and break my leg, I wouldn't have to go to work, man. And that's really
good.
No. And that's real though. Like I was that just not in tune with what I was supposed to be doing. And, so what my body does when I do that, my body will shut off. So I can work really hard, not take care of myself for a long time, but there is an end. It does get to empty. And when that happens, I get sick. I'll get ill. Now, this hasn't happened in years and years and years, but I'll get sick, and that's what happens. So I'm like 23 years old. I'm in North Carolina, and I'm just like deadly ill.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
So like somebody from work's got to come take me to to the hospital and say, well, it's viral, well, it's this, it's that, or whatever. I just knew that I was just at my wit's end, and I had heard that my high school principal, a guy named John Flatt, was opening a new school back home in Cobb County. And so I called him and I said, Mr. Flatt, and he was friends with my dad. My dad was involved, in the booster club and stuff like that at the school with the Walton Facilities Foundation and stuff. And so, he had known my dad. I called Mr. Flatt and I say, look, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. My mother was not doing super well. My sister, who, I finished my sophomore year at Auburn 2 weeks after my dad died. My sister had to graduate from Georgia that week. And she moved to Japan. She went to teach English in Japan for 2 years. So she was gone. And my mom was basically living by herself back home. And I there was a lot of that I wasn't comfortable with, it's like, I'm supposed to take care of things. I'm supposed to handle things. And so, I just felt like if I moved back to Marietta, that would be what would be best for my family. So I talked to Mr. Flatt, and, he wanted to meet and check it out. So I take a couple of days off. I go home, to Georgia, and I'm eating wings at the $3 cafe, in Buckhead with my old high school principal. And we talk, a little bit. He kind of feels me out. And he's like, okay, we talk about the TAP program. We talk about, getting alternatively certified. And then we get in the car and we drive to the Board of Education, Cobb County's Board of Education. And we meet with a lady in HR there. She pulls my transcripts. I'd already had them forwarded. She pulls my transcripts and just looks, and she says, okay, you've taken enough calculus. Remember now, I had a big fat F on there from business calculus. She said, you've taken enough calculus to teach math. You want to teach math? I said, sure. We all shook hands, and that was it. So I finish out. That was probably in like April of 2002. And I finish out working for a couple weeks, moved back home, and they threw me a bone. They let me teach an accounting class as an elective that first year too, which was pretty neat. But it's June. None of the facilities are done. So, this is Kell High School, by the way. Sorry, I guess I should have clarified. The new school was Kell. So that's where I got my first job and really got my start. And Greg Vandergriff, who's, just had, tons of success and is doing a great job at Prince Avenue, was the head football coach. And so what Mr. Flatt had told me to do was like, look, none of our facilities are up and running yet. So the team is doing summer workouts at this elementary school, and it's all body weight stuff. There's no equipment, there's nothing. And he's like, here's when they meet. You need to go and just introduce yourself. Now, interestingly enough, one of my other football coaches at Walton, who was the head baseball coach, Dennis Jordan, and I think he finished up at North Paulden. Just legendary baseball coach in the metro area. Guy's outstanding. He was on staff too at Kell, and he's actually he was the first human being ever to call me Coach Cannon. Was Dennis Jordan, and I'll remember that forever. But so I just show up, and I'll be danged if that night before is when Brock Vandegrift was born. And so Greg shows up, and he hadn't slept. His first child had just been born, and he's got this 23-year-old young guy showing up just saying, hey, I'd love to help him coach football. So he shakes my hand and he said, like, he didn't even know I was coming. I mean, obviously, you're not going to call the guy, like his first baby is being born. Yeah. So he didn't know I was going to be there. And I just show up, and praise God that I knew Dennis Jordan, though. That really, really helped me. I was like, oh my gosh, like I know somebody. Like he was one of my coaches. So it's like I didn't even know he was going to be there. And so I just don't go away. And so he comes up to me. Greg comes up to me at the end of the workout. And he says, look, this is how I handle first-year coaches. He's like, I can't pay you. I was like, I understand. And, that's another thing these young bucks don't understand. Back then, you worked for free. And if you were lucky enough or worked hard enough, you earned some pay. You earned a partial supplement, or, maybe a booster club took pity on you or something. But I worked for free.
Like being a GA.
Yeah. And that's exactly what he said. He goes, I treat new coaches like grad assistants. You're not coaching a position. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. And of course, at that time, the only thing I knew about coaching football was zero. I thought I knew some because I had played, but man, you don't know anything until you really get in the thick of it. But that staff that first year had Gary Varner on it. Had Ray Manis. They've named Roswell's Field after him. I was a dang legend. Had Johnny Caldwell, which if you don't know him, that's a guy you would have just loved back in the day. I don't know what Johnny's doing now, but he was the head coach at Sprayberry and some other places before. Jason McDaniel, who I think after he left, he went from Pope to Kell. And then after he left Kell, he was the head baseball coach at Cherokee for a long time. And let's see. Gosh, who else was on that staff? Keith Ball was on that staff. He was a principal at Marietta, I think, in 2019 when they won it. One of our community coaches was George Jones, not the country music artist, but definitely the George Jones that won some national championships as an offensive lineman at Georgia Southern for Irk Russell. His son, Jarrett Jones, is a killer baseball player at LSU right now. A really good player. Golly, who else was on that staff? Theron Cooper was on that staff. Gosh, it's hard to remember now. Long time ago. 2002 was a long time ago. But I tell you what I did, though. It's a new school, so you don't, there's no gear. But the Marietta Daily Journal is showing up like every other day. So the newspaper is there taking pictures of the kids and the coaches just doing push-ups and burpees and, line touches and whatever. And I didn't even have a T-shirt. So what I did was I just started showing up in obnoxious off-color shirts. So at Kell, it's copper, which is really burnt orange, and white and a little bit of black. So those were the colors. So I'd show up in a bright green shirt one day. I'd show up in a purple shirt the next day. And I just did that for about a week. And then the paper showed up and Greg just, goes to his truck, just throws me a T-shirt. So that's how I got my first T-shirt, and I don't know anything. I'm just, we're splitting them up into groups and okay, Coach Cannon, you go over there and be this group to do the push-ups. Okay. Yes, sir. I mean, that's what we're doing. But I got to tell you, it was a crazy good learning experience where my first job, for coaching football was at a startup program. So I really learned the ins and outs, the importance of, handling equipment and what that looks like and what building and starting a feeder program looks like and how important it is to just have good people top to bottom and whatnot. And then, so we get through the summer and school starts. Well, Coach, I've never taught, I did no student teaching. I'd never taught a class in my life. So when the bell rings, when that Algebra 1 class comes in for the first time on the first day of school, was the first time I'd ever taught anything.
Ooh,
yeah. And I'm the whole time I'm like, they're going to know if I'm afraid. They're going to smell the fear. So I better get right. And so honestly, I just had to kind of psych myself up. It was Algebra 1, thankfully. I'm a numbers guy. Thoroughly enjoy.
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Game night's fun until someone spends 5 minutes lining up one shot. Chalk, breathe, re-chalk, still aiming. While they figure it out, I fire up Chumba Casino. I can spin anywhere, anytime, and there's always a new social casino game every week. Spins happen way faster than that shot. Play now at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
The math classroom I did for 17 years, but I was teaching Algebra 1 and Algebra 1 Part 1, right? Like, so your block Algebra 1 and then like the year-long class for some of those kids. And, so I'm just enjoying doing that. And
well, they're not going to out-math you.
Right. Yeah, that's the way it was put to me was they probably won't be able to challenge you on much.
Right.
Was kind of, my department head was a lot of Walton teachers came to Kell as well. So department head was the mom of a girl I graduated with and had grown up with. And, she was, my wife's homeroom teacher, back in the day. So like Regina McKinney and her son, Craig, I was a senior when I was a freshman. We played together. And he ended up joining that staff at Kell a year or two later. And he's been the athletic director at Marietta for a long time now. He's been at Sequoia and he's an athletic director at Marietta. So it's just a pretty tight, pretty small world. A couple neat things about Kell. You had Seth Rogers on not too long ago talking about Temple. Well, in our second year, our first year, we just played a freshman and JV schedule. So no varsity games. So we had 9th graders and 10th graders had to come if you were zoned. 11th graders could choose to come. So we had about, 4 to 450 in the freshman class and 4 to 450 in the sophomore class, but we had 151 juniors. And I remember that because those jokers chose to come. And I got to tell you, they weren't the best clientele of the school that they were already at. So we had a lot of kids that were getting their 5th and 6th chance at high school coming in. And, and I was that young teacher, really willing to wade in there, during the fights and break them up and stuff like that. I learned early that you do not involve yourself when the females are fighting.
Yeah. Let them get tired.
The boys don't want to fight.
No.
So when you get in there, and break them up, they're hold me back, hold me back. Yeah. The girls will absolutely gouge your eyeballs out.
Absolutely.
So I learned early. They put me in a corner classroom where the bus lanes came in. So the school would get flooded in the morning with the kids coming off the bus. And I got to tell you, my first semester ever doing it, man, there many a days, those double doors busted open, with people fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And Kell is a great school, and it is now, and it was then. But those growing pains that first year, trying to, set the standard, in the hallway and the behavior and stuff like that, it was crazy. And I can't remember if it was that summer or the next. It was my only AFCA clinic experience, and that was absolutely wild. It was in New Orleans, which I don't suggest for any clinic location. And I'm the young guy, and I'm in the back of an SUV or something. We're in New Orleans, and there's another head coach. I mean, we're packed. There's people everywhere, and there's another head coach from a school close by. I won't name it. He's still the head coach there. It's in the northern part of Cobb County. And me and him are in the back with like the window down the SUV, and Dennis Franchione's walking on the sidewalk, and this coach is just hanging out the back. And we are stone cold sober, by the way. And Dennis Franchione hadn't coached a game for Alabama now. And this coach is just yelling his name like, Coach Franchione, I know you see me, Dennis. And I'm thinking, what have I got? I mean, I was an accountant not too long ago. Like, what did I just get myself into? And that night, I'm standing at the craps table with Barry Alvarez, Houston Nutt, and Tommy Tuberville.
Oh yeah.
And I'm thinking, this is outstanding. I don't know if I don't even want to bother him. Tommy Tuberville's telling me, he was a GA at Miami and when he was like 38 or something or 40, I can't remember. He's like, I kind of got a late start. I was like, okay, pretty cool. War Eagle, man. I'm fired up to see him out and about, and that was whatever year it was. I can't remember, but it's when Ohio State, it's when Jim Tressel and Ohio State and Miami, Larry Coker and Miami played for the national title. And both of them spoke like the next day at this AFCA convention. And it was fascinating, man. I'll stick to my local Nike Coach of the Years and Glazier clinics, man. Those big time convention ones are crazy. And of course, I didn't know any better being so young and then seeing all these coaches and trying to, get to know the guys on staff and things like that. I didn't know any better. Now I did learn some valuable lessons during that time. When you got a guy like Ray Manis around and Gary Varner and, these guys that, Ray Manis was already a legend. Gary Varner, became one with, what he did at Allatoona for all those years. But, a bunch of times, Ray Manis would put his arm around me at practice and say, no, Geoff, hey, you need to think about doing it this way, and that kind of stuff lasts forever. I also knew that I needed to wait to be invited, to the conference table. I would sit in a chair against the wall. I knew my role. I knew I did not coach a position. I didn't coordinate anything but the water and the equipment, bag. And I even screwed that up some too, man. We got to Sprayberry for a JV game one Thursday afternoon. And my one job was to bring the footballs. Guess what we didn't have?
Footballs.
The footballs. If there's a mistake, Coach, if there's a mistake to be made, I made it that year, and it was so good for me, kick and tease footballs and physicals. That's when you had to bring the physical copy of the physicals, man. I had that binder, man. I'm pretty sure we went to Harrison one time and I forgot that, but I was in my car. So I drove back and got it. But, I'm telling you, but it makes you organized. Like, so you better believe I had a checklist after that.
Oh yeah.
And we didn't have, I think I had a flip phone maybe, right? Like it wasn't like we had these smartphones where you've got, you're putting in these notes or whatever, but no, I had an Excel spreadsheet, checklist after that. And it really helped me get organized. And, we would do some things over the summer, to take attendance. Well, that was my job. Well, so I had to build, no one gave me anything. I had to build the spreadsheet, and build the roster and do these things just to try to help.
Well, and that's one of the best things about those old heads is when they gave us something to do, they didn't really care how we did it.
That's right.
Just go do it. So we don't have to do it.
That's right.
And it made you develop your own system.
Yeah.
They didn't care.
Hey, it's like, great idea. You're in charge.
Yeah. Congratulations. You are now the all-time
You're in charge.
Roll call guy. Now,
right.
I don't have to worry about that.
That's right.
Go. Run with it.
And that's so important. And being a head coach now is so important that, when guys are just taking things off your plate, good Lord, it's so helpful. And, they're not, and again, I am crazy OCD. So, you and Tracy Malone talk about your clothes hanging. Mine's by color too, but also by sleeve length.
Yeah.
Man.
I've got a top. My top is the top of my closet is short sleeve. The bottom is long sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
And it's same color.
Yeah. That first year we do freshman and JV ball. And then that second year we do a non-region varsity schedule. Peachtree Ridge was new and Monday's Mill was new. So we played both of them twice. We ended up going 8-2. We beat Peachtree Ridge once. They beat us once. We beat Monday's Mill once and they beat us once. And we ended up going 8-2. That was pretty fun. But one of those trips was to Temple High School. And on Friday nights, I was in the box. I did not have, and for a lot of those, games, I didn't have a headset. was in the box without it.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Headset, so I'm just charting. And if somebody that's got a headset on has a question, by God, I better have an answer, right? And, my experience at Temple, that was my first experience of like an outstanding, like hospitality room in the press box.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I was eating chicken wings. I was eating pizza. I was drinking cold Coca-Colas. I was like, is this what this is like? Like, this is amazing. And I didn't even know like people did that, but we get out of Cobb County and go all the way to Temple, and there we are. And I'll be danged if we didn't win the game 14-7 behind 2 toss sweep touchdowns by a 9th grade Jonathan Dwyer. He ended up being pretty good.
Yeah, he wasn't bad.
Yeah. And so, that was a lot of fun. Fast forward to year 3. Oh, wait, let me back up. I remember that first fall pre-planning. I've yet to teach a class. And Dennis Jordan was the AD. He comes into the coaches meeting and says, raise your hand if you're only coaching one sport. And I raise my hand. Leave your hand up if you do not coach a spring sport. So I left my hand up, and he looked and he said, Geoff, congratulations, you're coaching lacrosse. Like, what? Like, they didn't even have that when I was in school. Like, I didn't even watch it on TV. Like, I couldn't even, like, I had no idea. And thankfully I was like the boys' assistant, and I got to tell you, it was a fun game, but man, you're just, rules clinics, like watching, there wasn't like a bunch of YouTube videos. Like, you had to get DVDs, you had to get VHS tapes to watch to try to learn how to coach and play lacrosse. It was wild. And the first 2 years I was a boys' assistant. And then my 3rd year at Kell, I was the girls' head coach, which was technically my first head coaching job. if you don't count the 9th grade, I was like the 9th grade, head football coach and the head girls lacrosse coach, which is crazy for 2 reasons. Number one, coaches girls is entirely different, and that was a first experience for me. And then number 2, the girls lacrosse game is not even anywhere near what the boys game is like. And so I had to learn a bunch of new stuff. It was wild.
So where'd you go after Kell?
Well, so on a Tuesday of week 1 going into year 3, we're playing North Cobb. It's going to be our first year playing a region schedule. And they come in and clean house. They ended up firing John Flatt, our principal. They let Greg go. They let Dennis Jordan go, and it was just wild, man. And they named an interim head coach, and we went over to North Cobb that Friday night, and we won. I can't believe it. We ended up going 3-7, but we won that first one, losing our head football coach on that Tuesday. Real testament to Gary Varner in calling the offense, and had some Troy Peterson calling the defense. I mean, he was a longtime defense coordinator for Gary at Allatoona, and Kirk Cross is the guy they named as the interim. But that was just crazy, and I got to tell you, it rubbed me wrong. All the stuff that went down and the way they did it, it really made me bitter towards Cobb County, which is, where I grew up, where I went to school. I thought I'd be there forever, coach, right? I mean, if I go anywhere, maybe I'll go to Walton and get a chance to coach for Ed, right? I mean, that's all I'm thinking. And I'm after they treated those people that I cared about poorly, I was leaving. And I interviewed at Pope, which is still in Cobb, and I didn't want to go there. I interviewed at Cherokee, which I thought could have been good. I interviewed at Roswell. That's where Gary went. Gary went to work for Tim McFarland to be the OC at Roswell and wanted me to come with him. I interviewed over there and was offered the job and ended up not going. I got married in 2003. I'd met my wife Jessica at Auburn, but she had gone to Walton as well. She was just a couple years younger than me, and I didn't know her in high school, but we met at Auburn, and of course didn't date till 5 years later, all that stuff. But her family is from Brunswick, Georgia. And her grandfather had been on the Glynn County school board for like 17 years back in the 80s and 90s. And so this is '05, May of '05. Well, back at like clinic season after the fall of '04 football season. I applied at Roswell, applied at Cherokee, applied at Pope, and then I promised her that I would look into, a school down there in Brunswick. And there's Glynn Academy and Brunswick High. And, Glynn Academy is everybody knows it now, right? With as famous as Rocky Hidalgo is. And so I go down there and interview with the principal, and there's a math opening. But I got all that set up because of a Glazier clinic in Atlanta. I'm sitting in the back. Rob Ridings has been the head football coach for one season at Glynn Academy. He's sitting in the front row of a wing T clinic. And I'm sitting in the back waiting for him to walk out. And I just stop him and introduce myself. And, next thing you know, I'm an offensive line coach at Glynn Academy High School in the fall of '05, and I moved to Brunswick. And so I stayed at Kell for 3 years, and I ended up being at Glynn with Rob for 8 years. And it was crazy. Lots of fun. Some tough times, a lot of, St. Simon's Island, Sea Island, if you're Jekyll Island, if you're going to public school, you're zoned for Glynn Academy, but so are 6 of the 8 government housing projects. It's the craziest mix of socioeconomic young people that I've ever been around in my life. And what we learned is that the kids got along great. They all thought that you owed them something. All of them, whether they were rich or poor or whatever. And, just like at any place, there's some outstanding kids and some ones that are, that you really need to set the tone from. We started a family, and, being a teacher, a lot of kids ruin some great baby names for you. I can't name my kid that. Like, I had 3 Daniels, and they were all turds, stuff like that, and there were some fun experiences. At Glynn Academy, they hadn't had much success in a couple years previous before Rob getting there. And then 7 out of the 8 years that I was there with Rob were playoff years. And, let's see. And the year we didn't make it, Coach, we went 7-3, and it was probably our best team, and we just lost the wrong ones. And, those were some pretty good times. I got to tell you though, my mother, she was still alive back then, came down. She was a preschool teacher for 33 years. So she would her and my wife would decorate my classrooms, right? Like I wasn't doing that. I had a pretty bland, pretty boring math classroom when you looked at the walls. But I got to tell you, I loved teaching it. And, I've had a lot of kids tell me, Coach, I've never liked math, but I enjoyed coming to your class. That meant a lot to me. But, about 3 weeks into my first semester at Glynn Academy, the math building got struck by lightning and burned to the ground.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So I pulled up. I normally got to school. I didn't have any kids then, so I pulled in at 5:45. Rob was one of those, it didn't matter, if you were teaching an EOC class. Your planning period was spent in the equipment room doing laundry and getting things right, and that's just how that was. He had worked for Luther Welsh for a long time, and by golly, we were going to work hard. We were going to burn the midnight oil, and we were going to work. And so I would get to school super early to just make sure my classes are planned well. And there's Glynn Academy had 10 buildings. It's an open campus, so I had a stack of Powerade towels, for when it rains. These poor kids would come into my class just soaked to the bone. But yeah, we had a math building and it burned down. That was crazy. I sent a fireman into my classroom for two things: my wedding picture of my wife and I on our wedding day, and a CD-ROM that was stuck in the tower of my computer that had my entire mathematics life on it. So I was like, listen, you gotta make it out with that, or I'm just screwed.
And if you can't get the wedding picture, it's okay. I got more of those, but I gotta have.
Yeah, I really need that CD, man. That CD-ROM. But I got to tell you, life, Glynn Academy. My third year at Kell, I did get a stipend. My second year at Kell, a nice booster learned that I was working for free and wrote me a $400 check. So I made $400 my second year coaching. I did get a coaching stipend my third year. And then, I was coaching receivers and whatnot. Cause we had to shuffle a lot of things around when they let Greg go. But at Glynn Academy, I was, varsity offensive line and, just getting after it and, really enjoying that time there. We did get to take a trip up. We had a lot of long journeys for first round playoff games. And we'd go to Northside Warner Robins a couple times. And, somebody asked if Auburn, got lost, their bus got lost or something when we'd watch these cats run out of the run through. But like, oh my God.
Yeah. Coach Nix made that decision.
Yes, Lord. And, we went up one year. I can't remember which year, but you might know, cause I think you were in the area, but we had to play at Creekside. And their quarterback was Eric Berry.
Yeah, that would have been 05.
Yeah, so definitely one of the best kids I've ever seen play the game. Now, what was awesome about that football game is we take the opening kickoff and we drive it down and score, kick the extra point at 7-0. We kick off. They fumble it. We fall on it at like the 7. Our running back gets concussed on 3rd and goal. So he's out. I'm thinking, that's not too good. We snap it, hold it, kick it, and we're up 10-0 with about 6 minutes to go. And they've just taken the one snap. They've just, they fumbled their first play. We kick it off again. Coach, they screw around and it's 1st and 10 for them on the -4. And Eric Berry trots out there and runs midline. For 96 yards.
Yeah, I saw that the first play when they played us too. So don't feel
bad. 10-7. Yeah, 10-7. We lose 33-10.
Yeah, he was good. And not only was he good, he was very polite after the game. He'd have his helmet under his arm. He would shake your hand, look you in the eye, and
yes, sir, no, sir, thank you, sir.
He was as
exceptional.
If, I enjoyed beating the crap out of you, sir. I mean, he didn't say that, but I mean, he might as well have, because he was. And Whitley was the head coach. I mean, they were so, and he wasn't the only one. I mean, they were good.
They were,
and he was one of the best I've ever coached against.
Yeah, no doubt. And so we took that tail whip, and that was pretty fun.
Yeah, he was a dude. He double read the midline the first play against us.
Ooh.
He saw it was a pull, and he saw the linebacker, instead of sitting where he was supposed to, smoke the dive too, and went, "Don't mind me, deuces to the house."
See ya. And we had a kid, Antonio Frederick, ended up playing at Eastern Kentucky, an exceptional football player, inside linebacker, and he had the angle on him. And that play, he had the angle on him, and we just watched him run right by him and run away from him. We couldn't believe it. We're like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a long night. And it was, and a long ride back to the coast.
Yeah. He was good.
Yeah. The only other really crazy part, and when I was coaching track at Glynn Academy too, and that's where I met Kevin W. Stevenson.
My guy.
Yeah. So he was coaching, he was working at Risley, which is the alternative school. And, at the time, and coaching track at Brunswick. So that was my first introduction to Kevin W. And then when he was in Waycross, and I was at Brantley, I got to talk to him a lot more, but that was pretty fun. The only other really crazy thing that happened at Glynn Academy, now there was 1,000 things, but this one, I mean, this is a story that even, I haven't told my children, because my wife was pregnant with my first son. And my job for pre-practice and whatnot was to stay in the locker room and run everyone out. And so 100% of the coaches are out on the practice field. I'm back in the coach's locker room. This building has been demolished. It doesn't exist anymore, but I'm back in the coach's locker room, which was attached to the freshman locker room. And then there was a long hallway where the showers and bathrooms were. And then it was the main locker room, which was also attached then through to the weight room. And I just hear a commotion. And Coach, I come out of that coach's locker room and I look way down this long hall, and that locker room is slammed full with people. And I'm like, well, this isn't good. There's a lot of hollering. And I run up to basically the back of it, and there's at least 3 or 4 camcorders. But you weren't video nothing with your phone back then. But these kids had camcorders out and they were filming, and there was a fight going on in the locker room. And it turns out that one of our kids, who will remain nameless, he was from across the street in Glenville, and he would go to the St. Simon's Island in the summertime and box and fight, and old boy didn't lose. And he apparently there was another group of people that were not from the island. That were from Brunswick, and they were on the island that night, and he ends up beating up this guy and ends up being like a gang leader. And so what they had done, I found out later through all the police reports, is what they had done is they had the alternative school got out at 2, and it was way down Albany Street, and they would get out at 2:00, and we didn't get out till 3:15. So all these 200 kids that were in alt school would walk down the street and wait across the street from Glynn Academy for school to get out. And so there were 8 or 9 police cars when the bell rang at the end of school every single day, until they changed that. And it was pretty wise of Glynn County to finally change that. But so it was wild, man. Like it was a rough area for a little while.
And so fight club going on.
Yeah. And so what turned out that they had stationed people, just like a random student with a backpack that looked innocent at 2 of the exits of the locker room. And when the last coach was out, they kind of just held the door and in flooded at least 50 people. And so I'm at the back of it and they're fighting and I also learned that, pre-practice, we had every skill kid out, but most of our linemen were still in the locker room. And the guy came in and he had a gun, he had a pistol in his waistband, and he walked around the locker room holding his shirt up, and he said very calmly and very nicely, "Hey, I have a gun. Do not get involved." And so you've got 9th grade offensive linemen that are, about to cry, and you just got kids that are scared to death. And this kid ends up getting in a fight with the other kid. And by the time I got there, very wisely, they had backed my guy into a locker, and he had grabbed a helmet and started using that. And so the fight was coming to an end in our guy's favor, but that doesn't mean it would have ended well for anybody. And so the only thing I knew to do, Coach, was to blow my whistle and get everybody out there. I start blowing my whistle like an insane person, screaming at the top of my lungs for everybody to get out. They clear a path. I get up to the front, and the biggest human being that was not on our football team that was in that room. He's huge. I mean, I'm looking up to the back of his head. And Coach, my dad taught me since I can remember, hit first and hit him as hard as you can. And I will admit, as a 46-year-old grown man, that I hit this person.
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Another checkered flag for the books. Time to celebrate with Chumba. Jump in at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. CT&Cs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
From behind. It was absolutely a cheap shot. But from what I come to learn out, I might have been killed. So I hit him in the temple as hard as I could, and he dropped. And after that, everybody ran out the door. And so once everybody was kind of settled, I call 911. We get our SROs are running. coaches are running in, and it was a panic for like an hour, man. Like, we've got kids getting into their cars to go get their guns, coach. You know, I had one kid ended up being a sensational football player. He's really good friends with Darius Slay and all those guys over at Brunswick. These are kids that I coached in track, and and he's like, Coach, I'm going to get my AK. And it's like, son, you're not. You're going to football practice. Like, we got to talk about this. Like, you've got to be able to make a decision that won't, change your life forever, man, by going to, like, it was a crazy thing. So basically, our locker room got raided by a gang, and I was the only dang adult, in the building at the time. And it was just insane, man. Like, I was shook for a while, and I had to go home that night and tell my wife that happened, and she's pregnant, and I'm thinking, like, she gonna make me quit. What are we doing? It was wild, man. But
so on that note, where'd you go after there?
Yeah, well, I went to Frederica Academy, Coach. I went to St. Simon's Island, to the small private school.
Yeah, that was a bit of a change.
Yeah. So I applied for they had started a football program, and 3-4 years in, their coach resigned, and I applied for the job, and it was that was my first head coaching interview process, and I ended up a finalist with Brandon Derrick, who was our offense coordinator, who was also the defense coordinator on that Temple team back when we took that Kell group over there, which was odd. But anyway, he was our offensive coordinator. I had worked with him for 4 years at Glynn Academy, and he had been a head coach in Tennessee. And so I remember the headmaster called me and said, look, we are offering Brandon Derrick the job, but what will it take for you to come? And that's, so they liked me enough to want me to still, take a job there. And, with private schools in the church league, sometimes, you can ask for things that you can't at a public school. And so, they made it worth my while for my children to be able to go there. This time, all 3 boys have been born. I've got 3 boys and then a little girl. She's a lot younger. She didn't come till later. But so Kirkland, Charlie, and Philip have been born. And so a big part of my desire, after my locker room experience there, a big part of my desire going over to Frederica was that so my children could get that kind of education. And so they made it worth my while. So I ended up going over there with Brandon, and I was offense coordinator and, assistant head coach and whatnot. But in the 4 years that we spent at Frederica were awesome. But I got to tell you, I'm walking into a classroom of 9 kids for AP statistics, and I'm like the 6th smartest kid in the room. They were really smart. And
but that's fun too. I mean, that is fun.
Yeah.
No, I mean, really, I'm not being sarcastic. That's fun too when you have kids that are intelligent.
Yeah. So I'd have to go home every night and do AP stat homework.
Yeah.
Man, because they could challenge me.
Yeah. You don't want to sit up there and not have an answer.
Yeah. And that was great. I'm teaching Algebra 1, Honors Algebra 2, some AP statistics, just really, getting it, coaching some great kids. I will tell you, our first spring, we had 12 kids, and I was trying to hang myself in the soccer nets. And, at Frederica, you got to do everything. If you're an athlete, you have to run track, play baseball, play soccer, play basketball. You have to do everything because there's so few kids. And so we had 12 come out for that first day of spring, and I'm thinking to myself, what have I done? But it was really a great opportunity to cut my teeth as a play caller and really learn, to have answers. Working for Brandon Derrick was outstanding. We're going to use our time wisely. We're going to be efficient, but we're going to work hard. I mean, he's still painting the field over there. Like I was able to at least do the laundry and run the equipment room, but you got to do everything there. For a lot of times, those sweet, wonderful people over there just didn't really understand football, though. It's 1,000 degrees and really humid, on Friday nights for half the season until the time changes. And so we asked for a sideline fan, like a big misting fan. And so they're like, you know what, Coach, great idea. the next day, 2 days later, this guy comes and rolls 2 fans off the back of the truck. And we said, the sweet booster lady was right there. And we said, ma'am, we only needed 1. And she said, well, that's for the other team. we said, but ma'am, we want them to have heat exhaustion. Just crazy. Coached some great kids over there. And in fact, this coming Saturday, I'll be on the island at a draft party, for a kid that we coach there that's hoping to go high in the NFL draft, man. Just exciting stuff, and some great players. And I'm pretty fortunate that when Jalen Simpson was there, he ended up going to Auburn. He could have gone anywhere, but he went to Auburn. So not only did I get to coach him a little bit in high school, but I got to go to my alma mater and watch him play really good college football. And so we got high hopes for him. And I had thought at that time I enjoyed so much working for Brandon that I was just a career number 2. That was my only head coaching interview, my only desire to be or whatever. And I was like, man, you know what? I'm just going to be a great lieutenant. I'm going to, take things off his plate. I'm going to help him, with culture. I'm going to help him manage, the team and things like that. And I just thought that was going to be it. But, I got to tell you, for some reason, going into year 4 and then after season 4, I just felt that, that I was supposed to take another crack at being a head coach. And so I applied for a couple other jobs, got, an interview at one and made it all the way to where the superintendent has taken me and my wife and my children around the elementary schools, and ended up not getting that one too. And I, of course, was disappointed, but it turned out, that, the guy they hire is doing such a great job, and it really, fits him and his family. It might not have been the best fit for me. And, what they told me was, coach, we love you, but, we don't think we can hire a GISA coordinator that's never been a head coach. And I said, I understand that. So I looked for some math openings, and I'll be danged if there's an Algebra 2 / AP statistics job at Allatoona High School back in Cobb, where Gary Varner's the head coach. And I called my friend Gary, and he said, I know I've got this opening, but never in a million years would I thought you'd leave down there. And I'm just like, look, I'm telling you, I need to get back into the 6A GHSA football. So I go up there. I move my family, and this is really the first big move. So Jessica and I moved down to Brunswick, but it's just us. All my children were born in Brunswick. We got Ella. She was a little itty bitty baby when we made the decision to move to Cobb, and we ended up living in East Paulding in Dallas, which was really, really close to Allatoona. Allatoona sits on the Paulding-Cobb border, and so that was the first big move for everybody. Move everybody up there, and I become the first running backs coach in the history of Allatoona football to not have a 1,000-yard rusher.
Attaboy.
So that was awesome. Real talented running back room. We had a kid. We played 13 games. Gary told me it was a rebuilding year, and we made it to the quarterfinals and really thought we should have beat Tucker. But just coached in some great games. We were the only team to play Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence that year, and that was their senior year. So that was 2 of those 4 losses. But man, that was fun to watch them play too. And we had a good year, and I enjoyed the school and the principal and the AD. But December comes, and I get a call from a buddy of mine back down to South Georgia that Brantley County had come open. Now, a lot of people, don't know, where Brantley is, but it's the county in between Glynn and Ware on Highway 82. And when you take Highway 82 to Waycross or to Brunswick, the school sits on 82. So you drive right past it. And I knew all about Brantley. At Frederica, we had done some 7-on-7 stuff there. And some summer things with them. So I was very familiar with the area, and obviously being from there. In fact, Sean Pender years ago had offered me an O-line job there, and my wife was pregnant with my second son, and I didn't want to be 45 minutes away, from the hospital, and that really was the only reason I didn't go. But God had plans for me to end up there anyway, and I spent a semester at Allatoona. That's what's crazy. I was listening to Coach Frazier talk about all his houses. For 12 years we lived in the same house in Brunswick, and it was only 2 schools. But once I moved up to Allatoona, and then we moved back down to South Georgia, gosh, it feels like we've moved 100 times since then. But, I interviewed at Brantley and got the job. And I got to tell you, driving down there from Allatoona, it was a freezing cold rain, and I get a flat tire on I-16 in the middle of nowhere. And I've got the back of I was driving a Honda Pilot at the time, and these 18-wheelers are just driving by at 70 miles an hour, pushing this freezing cold rain into the back of my car and onto me while I'm trying to change his tire. And but I make it, and I make it to the interview the next morning on a spare, and really enjoyed I'd gotten to the point there to where I really enjoyed the interview process, because I liked being able to communicate what I stood for. And I liked to be able to, to tell people who I was. I didn't want to tell them, this is, a good nugget for those young guys, but, you don't want to tell them what they want to hear, because then if they do hire you, you've sold them a bill of goods that you can't deliver on, because it's not who you are. And I was able to get the Brantley job as my first head job. And me and my oldest son, who was in the 6th grade at the time, moved back down to Brunswick, and we just kind of commute for a little while. And then my wonderful wife and my other 3 children come down over the summer, move back down over the summer, and we get rolling. Spent 6 good years at Brantley. Wouldn't trade it for anything. It's hard to win there. And they had been to the playoffs twice in their 51 year existence, and we were fortunate enough to make it 3 times in the 6 years that I was there. And you had Coach Feaster on, and with the job that he's doing and did at Long, he was nice enough to leave out the fact that the team they had to go on the road to beat to make the playoffs for the first time was Brantley. We ended up going 3-7 that year, but was able to make it, to the playoffs. And, our reward was to go play Liberty, who was averaging 50 points a game, and we ended up scoring a touchdown as time expired to get within 2, and they stopped us on the 2-point conversion. And we feel like if we'd have gotten that we had them, and we'd have, they should have beat us by 50. Just crazy stuff, man. And, that same year we went 3-7, or ended up 3-8, I guess. So it was 3 years ago. Tatnall, was supposed to beat us by 34, and we ended up beating them 13-10. And it was the largest max preps point differential bust, in the state that year. And really, Brantley is just going to have hard-working kids, hard-nosed kids. Kevin W. Stevens is telling the stories about, Contrell, not being able to swim and getting stuck at the river. Buddy, I didn't coach any Contrails my 6 years at Brantley. And, but absolutely coached some great kids. Jalen Williams, my first year there, Jalen Williams, who's the winningest basketball player in Auburn University history, was a really special, once in a lifetime, player at Brantley County High School. And, he was basketball only. And he decided to come out and play football his senior year, which was my first year. And he was caught a handful of touchdown passes and was an all region, first team all region wide receiver, and, you got to try to, throw it to the 6'7" kid, right? He's every bit of 6'8" now, but he was 6'7" back then.
Yeah, that makes that call pretty easy.
No doubt. We had a quarterback that could overthrow him though. That's for the life of me.
So you got the opportunity now to head up back to North Georgia, and you're just recently named, not recently now, it's been a few months, but you're at Coosa in Rome.
Yep. And so I guess my first week was like January 22nd. So I was up here, and I've kind of done it again. I came up here by myself this time, but I just stay up here during the weekends and drive 6 hours home, or I stay up here during the week and drive home to Brantley. My oldest son's a senior. He's fixing to graduate. Him and my middle son are on the baseball team. They're in the playoffs. I mean, just trying to get down there and watch them play. And Kirkland, my oldest son's got a lot of stuff that, the honors night and all these things. And, he's a Heron for life, and that's the way he likes it. And we're real thankful for Brantley and all the things they did for us, and wouldn't trade it for anything. But, it's just, it's funny. Sometimes you just feel that you've taken it as far as you can take it, and it was just time for me to put it down and for someone else to pick it up and to breathe some life into the program down there. And, so I knew I just had the feeling that, that we were finished there. And, so I interviewed at some places, all of which happened to be in North Georgia. And Coosa just seemed to be just an outstanding fit. There's some similarities here, down in Brantley. And then there's some things that are different. The facilities here, we're not in the new field house yet, but they're almost done with it. They're redoing the track, the field, lights, all kinds of stuff. The county's made an investment, so it's pretty exciting. And, I'm glad to be here, Coach. And I've been here since, the mid or end of January, and, trying to build relationships with kids. And, I'm in the weight room and just trying to love on them and get to know them and build some linemen and, try to teach a little bit of football and have some fun.
Well, that's awesome, Coach. And I know you're going to get that place going there, just like you've done everywhere you've been. What a freaking story. I mean, going from unpaid GA at Kell to breaking up gang fight in Glynn to Frederica Academy to the Nahana Nightmares that are the Blue Herons.
Yeah.
To Coosa, man. That's man, what a journey so far, and it's going to be awesome to watch you work the Lord's will up there in Rome.
I sure hope so. I just would really like for my family to get up here, but I understand we got a house to sell in a terrible market, and we've got to try to find a place to live. It's those little things, man. But, the coaches up here and the teachers and, just really just getting a staff hired, those are the things to, just rowing the boat and, just trying to get it all figured out, man. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Well, that's awesome. Coach, I appreciate you being on with us. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, just reach out and let me know.
Same to you, Coach. Thank you.
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Victory Lane? Yeah, it's even better with Chumba by my side. Race to ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T&Cs. 21+. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.